And welcome to another edition of the Hutchinson Report, Town Hall of the Year. We're doing something a little bit different today. It's actually a special edition of the Hutchinson Report. Now, we're going to have a soft bed of classical music. We started out, well, of course, we have a theme, but we also are starting out with something that, and Leroy, if I can disturb you for 1 second. This is not the L.A. Phil, but it goes back in time. Zubin Mehta. That's what you're hearing in the back. The Resurrection, Symphony No. 2, a towering, monumental performance last night. I got to tell you, it brought tears to a lot of people's eyes, too. They were frozen in their seat. It was such a magnificent performance. At Disney Hall of the L.A. Phil, Mehta on the podium, Mahler, The Resurrection. I mean, he lives and breathes Mahler, so. But this was a classic shot here. You know, from my collection, 1975, the Vienna State Orchestra. We're going to talk today about a lot of things in the world of classical music. Let me just read a little something here, kind of give you an idea of where we're going with the show today. Classical music faces a lot of challenges. Many people know that within the world of classical music, but outside the world, many people just look at it and say, hey, you got these orchestras, they're up there, they're big, it's an old musical form, they're making a lot of money, they think anyway. And, of course, it's always kind of the thing of the elite. Not necessarily. There are many challenges. Fundraising, getting younger people, filling those seats, musical tastes and styles change, how to attract new audiences, and the competition with other orchestras. In Los Angeles, of course, is the L.A. Phil. That is the standard, the benchmark in orchestras in the city, but there are other orchestras, too. We're not going to go into that because we're not going to mention other names, too. But nonetheless, suffice it to say, big and little, they're all over the place, and of course, California and the nation. In studio today, as we talk about the challenges and the future for classical music in this country and abroad, I mean, it's obviously global. We're also going to do something else. We have, and I'm really honored to have them in the studio with me. We have those that make the music. I often talk about, look, we got the big folk up there, the conductors and the concert masters and the soloists and all of that and the composers. What about the men and women in the pit that are in the orchestra and actually make the music, the sounds? Oftentimes, they're just, well, not even names. They're just there. But none of this would happen without them. So we're going to talk about, from an intimate standpoint today, about them and to them, what they do with the music, how they make the music, and how it's evolved in their lives. So let me go around, first of all, and introduce my guest. Someone who, God, how far do we go back? I mean, like an old married couple.
More than 40 years.
You didn't know that. We go way back. When someone walked in as practically a teenager out of high school to KPFK decades ago and worked with me, I said, oh, boy. And then, of course, I watched her evolution over the years with the L.A. Philharmonic. Anyway, that evolution now has brought her to this. Lenny Borston, Senior Advisor, External Engagement for the L.A. Phil. To my, Lenny, welcome.
Thank you
back
so much.
To KPFK.
Great to be back. Thank you.
Oh, home week. John Lofton. Wait a minute, where is it? I had it here somewhere. I got Superstar John here. Did I put it away? We got to put, there it is. Linda, you've been hiding it over there. Put that up there. And by the way, what we're also doing is we have our Facebook live stream. People are watching you, by the way. They're not just listening to you. Did you hold that up,
yes,
Leroy? Okay. Can I see that for a second? Here's when I saw this, I said, wait a minute, this guy looks familiar. I see him kind of tucked away in the back in the brass section with that big, long trombone. But he doesn't have his trombone today, but he's here. We got him. John Lofton, a trombonist, bass trombone in the L.A. Phil, and of course was spotlighted on the cover of L.A. Phil. And this is the 2019-2020 edition. And also joining us, last but not least, being Wang, first violin and associate concert master for the L.A. Phil. Also, I see here the Barbara and Jay Russell. We got a lot of names here. Barbara and Jay Russell chair with the L.A. Phil. Let me start with you, and then we're going to move right around. By the way, we're playing music throughout the whole time. You got the Mahler Resurrection, and did I have my playlist here? We've got quite an extensive playlist. Did someone give that to me? I just have it here. Let me go through that, kind of give you guys an idea of what we're going to be playing and listening to. We've got the Mahler Resurrection. We've got Beethoven, Symphony Number 5, dun 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 dun. You know, the Morse code. You know, in the beginning, World War II. We got the Symphony Number 5. We got Strauss, Don Quixote. We've got Dvorak. In fact, they talk about Dvorak's Symphony Number 9, The New World. That's not my favorite. I think his greatest symphony was Number 7, but that's just my personal preference. Tchaikovsky, the Piano Concerto Number 1, Stravinsky, Rite of Spring, Mozart, the Piano Concerto Number 21. I love that second movement. They hate it here when they say Elvira Madigan, but you know, it is what it is, commercial stuff. Mendelssohn. My favorite Mendelssohn symphony, the Number 3, the Scottish Symphony. He nailed it with that one. And Wagner, Götterdämmerung. So, Lenny, we talked a little bit about, or at least I mentioned some of the challenges of the LA Phil. You know, why don't you go through maybe 1, 2, 3 in order? As someone who's been intimately involved with the LA Phil for a lot of years, what are you facing? Kind of share that with our audience, because a lot of people have this impression when they think of the LA Phil, you're just loaded with money, you're loaded with big donors, you're loaded with the corporate rich out there, you're loaded with everything. You don't have any problems. There's no challenges. Is that true?
Of course there are challenges, but I'd really like to go at it from another angle, which is that the LA Phil has been growing and on a trajectory over the 40 years that I've actually been working with the Philharmonic. And that includes the move from the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion into the building of Walt Disney Concert Hall. Now that was a challenge. It took 3 groundbreakings and 17 years to build a new concert hall. But we built it, and what we also learned in the building of it was that people would come to hear the Philharmonic. And another thing we've learned about the audiences that we've grown in Los Angeles, there's trust. So that if you think of classical music and you think of works that have been composed centuries ago and that we perform and re-perform, and our musicians play over again, but they hear it fresh. And why do they hear it fresh? Because they hear it fresh in different contexts, because they are there and present in the moment, because they are paired in a program with something that might be surprising, because each conductor brings something new to the work that they do. And we've been fortunate to have Zubin Mehta, Esa-Pekka Salonen, and Gustavo Dudamel as the guiders of our musical direction over those decades that you refer to. We're also fortunate because the LA Phil, on behalf of the county, manages the Hollywood Bowl. So one of the challenges that that orchestras face is a business model where you have concerts and you perform them beautifully, and you have sellout audiences or not, and you have expensive tickets and a range of ticket prices that are less expensive, I think, than people have imagined, generally speaking. But we also have the Hollywood Bowl, and in the Hollywood Bowl, we are in a situation where the orchestra is playing, and we present other and perform other kinds of musics, and the Philharmonic, with the bowl that seats almost 18,000 people, are able to have revenues from the Hollywood Bowl that help subsidize the overall LA Philharmonic. It is an amazing public-private partnership. So in a certain way, we are in a blessed position, an unusual position. And yes, we have very strong supporters who are, as maybe big donors, and our board are enormous supporters of us. But we also have people, teachers, retired teachers, people from all walks of life, who are coming to the Philharmonic, sometimes for the first time, often for many times, and are confident when they bring their friends that they will have an experience that they enjoy. So I think most of all, our challenges are met with the opportunities that we have, and that people have liked what they come to hear, and they love the space in which they get to listen to amazing music.
You know, Lenny, and then John, I'm going to bring in Binion in just 1 second. By the way, about 9:25 or thereabouts, we'll open the phone lines, but hold off on that. Young people, it's often been said when you're talking about classical music, it's for the old fuddy-duddies. You know, I mean, you know, over 50, over 60, you're not going to get any young people. They're in the rock music, they're in the rap, they're into this, they're in the hip-hop. Who cares about classical music? I mean, Beethoven, you know, all these old dead guys coming, you know, Europeans. I mean, you hear that a lot. But there are a lot of young people, I notice that, that are coming. And you do have programs, especially. I know you have YOLA, which is the youth component. I know you have special days for young people that you come in 11 o'clock on Saturday with some of the you have the community outreach concerts, which you have been a part of for a long time. So are you seeing a major sea change in terms of more young people now getting involved?
If you can see a big smile on my face, and it's because the statement has always been, oh, what are we going to do about these aging audiences? And of course, now you and I are part of that.
Of course. No, speak for yourself. Okay. I just turned 19 yesterday.
I'll speak for myself. But the truth of the matter is the following. Since Dudamel arrived, or in the last 10 years, the average age of the audience in Walt Disney Concert Hall for the Philharmonic and all of the presentations has lowered by 8 years. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And at the Hollywood Bowl, the average age of the audience has lowered by about 4 years. And I would say, and in fact, I have the statistic right, the audience at the Hollywood Bowl that identifies itself as white is 53%. So I think that both when you talk about the LA Phil, you're talking about the orchestra at its heart, and you're talking about a wide range of programming that we do as well. And that with Dudamel in particular, you see those boundaries blending. There's a great crossover, and in that crossover or jam-ups or whatever you want to call it, or innovative programming or exciting programming, people are coming to hear for one reason or another and find something else and have a stepping stone or a kind of connection in which to build on that first experience they may have with the orchestra.
John Lofton, bass trombone. Lenny, can I steal that one more time from you? Because we got by the way, I have to keep emphasizing, thank you. I have to keep it close. I have to keep emphasizing it's also live streamed with our Facebook audience. And by the way, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, you have observations, comments, post it on our Facebook page. Time permitting, we'll read at the end. John Lofton, bass trombone. I see you quite often when I look up. In the back, tucked away, not always, tucked away, you have a very stoic look, very stoic, but you're always ready. Bass trombone, the brass section. We know about the violins, they're front and center. We got the cellos front and center, and as we move up, you can't get away from the drums. I mean, pounding away, and that's, by the way, my favorite. And certainly we have all the others, but the bass trombone. Tell us a little bit about how you started out and your evolution as a bass trombonist and your experiences. And also, by the way, how many years with the LA Phil?
This is, I started in 2004 as a sub here, and I got the job here in 2008. I've been here continuously since then. But I started bass trombone. I wish I could have like a really romantic story about it. But as you can tell, as we've met, I'm a tall person with long arms. So in third grade, when they were putting together an elementary school band, they said, well, you have arms long enough to play the trombone because you can reach further out than anybody else in the class. So that's how I got to play trombone. And I ended up going into bass trombone because it just fit my personality. I morphed a little bit into the tuba world, and I just was not a tuba personality. No offense to any tuba players, but
John, let me just say this: you're offending one of my granddaughters. She actually plays the tuba in her school band. But go right ahead.
I love tuba players. I just don't envision myself as one. But and then actually after I got into high school is when I switched over to bass trombone, and it was really my voice. I was really very comfortable in that role. I had my own part. I had my own chair. I was the kind of the liaison between the bass, the lowest bass instruments, and some of the tenor instruments, and it really felt really like a good place for me. I basically started out in third grade, as I said, and went on to the conservatory. I went to Oberlin College. I graduated from Oberlin. And I was very fortunate. I started working almost immediately. I got a job in Mexico, in Toluca, Mexico, for about 3 years. And then I was in Honolulu for about 4 years. And And then I moved to Phoenix, and and then after Phoenix, I came here. And I guess you could kind of say I'm kind of on a Sun Belt kind of a career path, based on my.
Good place to be.
Well, after you spend 4 years in Northern Ohio,
that's even a better place to be here.
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically how I arrived here in the LA Philharmonic. But you mentioned the brass section, and I just want to, if I can, just give a little bit of a sense of what it's like to be in that section. It's just an incredible group of musicians who are just incredibly talented and so dedicated. That's the one thing that I think really does distinguish our orchestra from not maybe all the orchestras, but some of the orchestras, is that we genuinely try to make the best possible performance happen on a regular basis, and that's a mental challenge that our brass section, I think, and our orchestra in general, has really taken to heart, and that's one of the things that I feel very honored to be a part of that, and it's a very fulfilling experience for me.
Well, a couple of quick things, and then Bing, come closer to the microphone. You're up next. A couple of quick things. The Philadelphia Orchestra, they have been renowned. When you think of Philly, the Philly P.O., you think of their big brass section. I mean, just booming out there. And all candor, for a long time, I wasn't really impressed with the L.A. Phil's brass section. I'm not a musician, so there's a disclaimer here. But like anything else, I know what I hear, and I know what I like when I hear something. I wasn't there, but I've seen the evolution over time. First of all, you've got stability. You've been there, and I recognize many of the faces that have been there a long time. Not a lot of turnover. The other thing that's always standing out, the challenge for a brass section, a special challenge. Again, I'm not a musician. My father was, his talent passed over me. I got none of that. I got a tin ear, almost. But I can tell, I've listened to music enough that I can tell when there's a note that's discordant in the brass section for some reason. But I don't get that with the string section. Maybe it's because there's so many of them. Why me, a non-musician, why can't I pick that out in the brass section? I've often been curious about that. If there's a note out of place.
Well, it's one of the axioms I'll tell my students. If you're going to play a brass instrument, people are going to hear you, so you might as well play good. So I tell them that they really need to work a little bit at some of the basic things that we all fret about, including string players and woodwind players, about just working as an ensemble, working as a group. And I think for me, that's an incredibly fulfilling part of it, is that, yes, you have individuals who have these incredible abilities and talents, but the LA Philharmonic the experience is like being a small part of something that's really great. And I think that extends even into, our relationship with our community, as well as just, beyond just being in the orchestra. You feel as if, yes, this is something that, we're not like Chicago, that's known for their great brass section, or the Philly Orchestra that's known for their great, string section. We're the LA Philharmonic, and, we are part of a greater whole in our community, and not just locally, I think even nationally and internationally as well.
By the way, you hear some clicks there, too. That's in our Facebook live stream, because these are people that are chiming in. So I kept the sound up so you can hear that. You can't see the comments, but you can hear the clicks, meaning people are commenting. Bing Wong. Now, you have a special burden, double burden. You're also triple burden, violin, first violin, and in addition to that, associate concert master. You're wearing a lot of stuff there. You're wearing many hats. Yeah, John talked a little bit about his evolution, how he started out. Talk about yours and your experiences so far. Start at the starting point. When did you come on to the LA Phil? What year? And then work back and then forward from there.
I joined the LA Phil as the associate concertmaster back in 1994, the third year of Esa-Pekka Salanen's tenure. I have to say, I have a very different path compared to most of my colleagues. I was born in Shanghai, China, to a family of violinists. My father played in the first violin section of the Shanghai Symphony. My mother taught violin at the middle school of the Shanghai Conservatory. But I was born during a very cold and grim time. I was born during the beginning of the 10-year Cultural Revolution, during which time both my parents were not allowed to play Western music as they were taught and trained. I was born end of November, where my father was really stripped away from all of his playing responsibilities. He was made to become a temporary janitor at the symphony. So because of that, my parents named me my first name, Bing. There are many characters in Chinese, but my specific character, my first name, means ice, because it was that cold and dark time in their lives. So I was born, and I went to a regular elementary school. But my parents started me on the violin at age 6, just like they had been teaching under the cover, behind the curtains, many of their nieces and nephews. And the reason was there were many military orchestras back then in China, even though the classical orchestra, the professional orchestras were shut down or forced to playing Chinese music. But the military orchestras had dance troupes, had orchestras, had play groups. So whoever can get in as a youngster has a fantastic job and stipend. And your life is spared from the possibilities of being sent to a farm thousands of miles away. So my parents trained and taught many of my older relatives, and sure enough started to teach me. And I remember humming those melodies along even before I started. Luckily, unfortunately, Cultural Revolution ended, and I was able to audition and started at the middle school of Shanghai Conservatory, where my mother resumed teaching. My father went back to the first violin section of the Shanghai Symphony. So in the year when I was 16, in the mid-'80s, the professor that discovered me from Peabody Conservatory of Music, his name is Burl Sinofsky. He was a former gold medal winner at the Queen Elizabeth competition. He came to China, I think that summer, before most of the other classical musicians did, came and taught for a whole summer, gave master classes, individual lessons. And I was one of the few that he discovered and wanted to help me to come to the States to study. I think he reached out to maybe 10 people, and I think I was the only one that spoke some English. Because my mother had envisioned that maybe someday, you don't know if that will ever happen, but that English might be helpful. Mm-hmm. So I actually had English lessons on the side for years. I spoke very little, but I was much better off compared to my other peers. So I was able to communicate with my future teacher, providing transcripts when the school required them. And so in 1985, before most of the Chinese foreign students came to the U.S., I was offered a full ride for bachelor's degree at Peabody. So I came, got on the plane for the very first time in my life, left Shanghai, not knowing when I would ever see my parents again. Then 4 years later, I started my master's degree at Manhattan School of Music in New York, studying with Glenn Dicterow, who was a former concertmaster of the LA Phil under Zubin Mehta, and then became concertmaster of New York Philharmonic again under Zubin Mehta. So I studied with Glenn Dicterow for 2 years, and actually a year into that, I won my first orchestral audition. I became section second violinist in Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. section second violinist means you play in the second violin section.
Let's stop you 1 second, though, Bing, because a lot of people don't know, and this question comes up often. What's the difference between a first and second violinist, maybe even third? So when they hear that, a violin is a violin to just the average person looking, but when they see first and second, many people say, well, what's the difference?
We really all play the same instrument. It's just harmonically, for orchestration, there are 5 parts of the string section: first violin, second violin, viola, cello, and the bass. So second violin plays a slightly lower line to the first violin. First violin is probably what you usually will hear when you hear the top voices of the string section. So we usually carry a higher line, or we often carry the melody. Second violin also carries the melody, but mostly sort of a lower to more of a middle voice, like a mezzo, like a mezzo to a soprano. So that's the difference. And we specifically audition apply to a certain position when a position is open. And so if it's second or first, or if it's associate concertmaster, it's very specific of what you audition for.
I want to come back to, because we're going to take a break in a second. We're halfway through the show. I want to come back, Bing, to this, that you have been with the Phil a long time, going back. I want you to talk before we leave. Again, this is not competition. I'm not asking you who's better or who's worse in terms of a conductor or this. But any differences that you have seen in your experiences over, well, really 20-plus years with the LA Phil? I know you've got a lot to talk about there. Let me do this. Let me just hold it 1 second. Ricky, can you bring up a little bit of, I'm not sure what cuts you're on, because we got about 8 of them. Bring it up just a little bit. Yeah, I thought so. That almost needs no introduction. Beethoven Fifth, in case you hadn't figured that one out. By the way, I'm going to talk for a second to our Facebook live stream audience. By the way, as you've already gathered, we're talking classical music today, playing classical music, spotlighting classical music. So, whether you're a classical music buff, fan, aficionado, or couldn't care less about it, still it's something that is part of the musical genre. And if you have a question, if you have an observation, but more likely a question, put it on the Facebook live stream, and we'll ask it before it's over. Welcome back to the Hutchinson Report, Town Hall the Air. I'm your host, Earl O'Farrill Hutchinson. John Lofton is with me. Bass trombone, the LA Phil. We just heard from Bing, and we're going to come back to Bing again, so hold all those thoughts. Someone used to say, you don't have to get it all in at one time. It will all work itself out over time. Rome wasn't built in a day. Because Bing, I haven't forgotten that question. I will let that germinate for a minute. Bing Wong is the associate concert master with the LA Phil. Barbara and Jay Rasulo chair. And first violin, Lenny Borson. She is the senior advisor, external engagement for the LA Phil, and much, much more, and also an old KPFK hand. Let me swing back to you, Lenny, again. Dudamel is now the conductor. This is the 10th year, is that correct, of his tenure?
No, we're into the 12th year, I guess.
Okay.
I
He's been here. He's been with us for a while. And you made a point a little bit earlier that we talked about young people coming in.
Yes.
Dudamel has had a huge experience. Conductors tend to be the superstars, as we well know, in the classical music world. They get all the publicity, they get all the attention, along with the specialists out there, i.e. the performers. But one thing that I do know about the LA Phil and watching it over time, going back, even back to Zubin Mehta in the 70s and going through, the challenge is not so much filling up, first of all, the Music Center, and now, of course, Disney Hall. But the other thing is keeping people coming back all the time, regenerating that. We talked a little bit about the young people. So do you have special programs, Lenny? I just kind of briefly mentioned some of the things I know, but things that people don't know. And I think this is a good place to mention, too, by the way, as we're talking. Lenny brought something in today, a gift for you. Why don't you work back from that, Lenny? Talk about this and special programs for outreach.
What you were holding up as a voucher, we have a program. There are a number of people or organizations or schools that call us and ask us if we have tickets that we might contribute to one of their events, and we prepared these vouchers that have where we invite people as our guests to a concert of our chamber music or organ recital or Baroque, and that's what you were holding up, and you can show it on Facebook. But we respond to organizations who are nonprofit organizations who are looking to connect to the LA Phil in that way. And also we connect with about 100 social service agencies because we have a number of complimentary tickets that we give to organizations who are working with constituencies who wouldn't have another way of getting to the Philharmonic or the Hollywood Bowl. And that's our Community Concert Connections program. We also work with this Board of Supervisors offices because with their work with their constituencies, they have a number of ways that they can offer tickets complimentary to different groups that they work with. And we're more than happy and pleased to be able to do that, and glad that we have a program that works, if that makes sense. With the groups, they have a leader and a Pied Piper, in a sense, who helps initiate and bring them into the Philharmonic, and the Philharmonic matches that with having people who greet and meet and also guide people through the first experience, if that's what the situation is. And I think you might then, with Dudamel, be thinking of Yola. Even before Gustavo Dudamel was named our music director, the Philharmonic, in its portrait of him, went to Venezuela and saw El Sistema and saw a music learning program and a youth development program that had more young people in Venezuela playing music than soccer, and that served a social function in the culture where kids were out of school at noon in Venezuela, which meant they had way too much free time. And Dr. Abreu developed El Sistema, starting with 11 people in a garage, and then it grew from there because he saw that there were orchestras in Venezuela, but they did not reflect or include musicians from who were Venezuelan at the time. And that was another issue that he was trying to think about. And when Dr. Abreu funded El Sistema, or was working in the policy and with government to fund El Sistema, he didn't go in through the arts, and he didn't go through education. He went in through community health, and that was an enormous aha and kind of an instructive moment for all of us. And in the courtship of Gustavo Dudamel, the Philharmonic developed a program that became named not initially as YOLA, Youth Orchestra LA. And in the first partnerships that we developed it in partnership with the Harmony Project and the Expo Center and the City of Los Angeles.
And also the City of Inglewood. You have a new facility going up
there.
That's
the most recent that we are building, and that's 10 years later. And again, circling back to something you said, I'm leaving Yola here for the moment, but circling back to your mentioning about donors and support of the LA Phil, we are very, very fortunate, and I feel particularly blessed, if that makes sense, or on behalf of the Philharmonic. Thomas Beckman, who's now the chair of the Philharmonic Board, was on our board 12 years ago when we were talking about Yola. And it was he who, as in his profession, he sold musical instruments. He'd been to Venezuela. He'd been around the world with his company that he had when he was younger. And he saw what music learning was about. So he, as a board member, when we were starting up Yola, had the best guidance for the board and for the LA Philharmonic, which was something along the lines of, if the Philharmonic was going to start a youth program for young people who didn't have the resources and the families who didn't have the resources to pursue music learning through schools or in their communities, that once we started it, we would not abandon it. And that is the case as we've started with Expo Center, the Yola at Expo Center, and Yola at Ola, and as you mentioned, we're also in East LA, Yola at Taurus, and building the Yola Center in Inglewood.
818-985-5735. Thank you, Lenny. 818-985-KPFK. The phone lines are open now. We're talking classical music today. I mean, I build the show as a revealing inside look at the state of classical music, but it's much more than that. So if you have some comments or questions, I mean, we got the experts right here, i.e. the musicians, and of course Lenny from the LA Phil. Big wheel down at the LA Phil. So any questions, anything that you want, feel free. Now's the time. You know what they say at weddings and funerals. Speak now. Forever hold your peace. 818-985-5735. 818-985-KPFK. John Lofton, you've been with the Phil now for a period of time. What's your favorite piece? Or pieces? Right off the top now, without even having to think. What do you like to play?
Well, one of the things that I was surprised about was how much new music that the LA Philharmonic plays. And I've been really finding myself embracing the challenge because for me, yes, I played Mahler many times in my career, but it's different than when you actually are learning something that you haven't played before. And you learn it and you embrace it and you develop a sense of it that this did not exist, prior to that. I mean, as an example, we had a performance where, when they asked if we wanted to play it, this was a chamber piece, and I looked at the music, and it literally had like a sonogram on the page, and there was just a lot of random symbols that you had to interpret and decipher, and I thought, well, I don't know, but, I ended up doing it, and it was one of the more fun experiences I've had. It was just an incredibly great piece. The composer was there. He was this young guy from Mexico City, and he basically came to the rehearsals, and he asked us not to repeat anything that we had done before or, over-rehearse it or over-prepare it. He just wanted it to be spontaneous, and for me, that was a real departure from, our normal state. So I thought, well, not only is it a fun thing to do, but it's a healthy thing to do too. So I've really been surprised at how I've been able to, basically feel rejuvenated by Phil's commitment to new music.
Now, John, forgive me what I'm going to say. Please forgive me. I'm asking absolution from you today on this one. And Lenny, don't take it the wrong way. Bing, please don't take it the wrong way. No slap at anyone. I am such a traditionalist. Give me the big guys. Give me Mahler. Give me Tchaikovsky. Give me Brahms. Of course, Beethoven. Give me Mozart. Give me Mendelssohn. Give me Schumann. Give me any of them. The new music, okay, we'll just leave it at that. No, don't get me wrong. There's a place for it. Happy for it, but I got to tell you, give me the big guy. That's all. That was just a personal thought. That's all.
And let me say,
please give me forgiveness on that.
We do, and we're very grateful that Los Angeles is large, and that
big tent for everybody.
It's a big tent, and that many people have found their way to the Philharmonic through your path or through a new music path, and they're all in it together, and you come for some things. Yeah. We're all eclectic. We all don't go to every restaurant and every type of restaurant, but a lot of us are, is it omnivores? We're omnivores. We want to try everything. And so there's a big enough community in Los Angeles. There's that. Plus, the LA Phil does enough of what you are most interested in that I think you're satisfied too. That you can thread your way. I noticed that you circled certain things in the
You see what I circled and what was left out. Right. But anyway, hey, everybody's got their thing.
Right, and that's what makes the world go around, right?
Bing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm almost trying to give you a playlist. What's your playlist? What do you like to play? You heard what John is into the new stuff. But you?
I have to say I love to play Mahler.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew I'd find somebody on my side.
Yeah, I'm not voting.
Thank you.
On a personal note, I have to say, I have to take this chance to say there is another piece that I've played with the Philharmonic many, many times that's close and dear to my heart, that it's a personal and it's the utmost artistic experience that I value, is to play the solo of Schindler's List with John Williams conducting. I've had the greatest honor of performing with him on that piece and other
And he
solo
does quite
pieces.
a bit with the LA Phil, too, John.
Yes,
Yeah.
over the years, many, many times. And there's nothing like playing that piece with him on the podium. It's just a surreal and unforgettable experience every time.
What are the rehearsals now? Rehearsals generally are not open to the public, correct?
Right.
I mean, from time to time, there are open rehearsals, but not a lot. So in a rehearsal, what goes on? What are you working on there? I mean, take us inside for a minute. A typical, okay, we have the Mahler Resurrection, and you got Zubin Mehta. My guess is Zubin, nice guy, but he's very demanding. He hears everything, doesn't miss anything. You can have 1 million instruments up there and voices. And if you get one thing wrong, he will hear that. So in the typical rehearsal, share this with our audience. What would an audience person peeking in, what would they hear and what would they see?
I think if I may start
And by the
first,
way, how long are the rehearsals typically?
about 2.5 hours.
Okay, every day?
We have usually about 4 of those before every concert program.
Okay.
This time, we actually only had 2 of those rehearsals with Zubin Mehta because we performed this symphony with him during our gala week.
Back in October.
Yes, and I think we had 3 rehearsals. I think we all remembered what he wanted from this and how he presents this. So it was actually very smooth this time. There was not very much adjustments, at least from where I was. So I think if I think about the rehearsals, usually I think there's the kind where we all know how the music goes and we actually have no problem playing through. And what we do is the conductor works with us to fine tune and to put his personal touch and to ask for certain things and effects, tempo adjustments, because he's like a director, right? He's like a movie director. How he sees this camera angle, how he wants to present this. So this is one kind of rehearsal where we have no problem playing through the piece, and then there's the new music kind of rehearsal where
you got nothing but problems.
where I think we struggle or we try to keep up and try to play it properly. And so those are another kind of rehearsals where we just trying to get through.
You know, John, there is in the popular culture a sense of the old European conductors, Toscanini, people like that, Zell. They were authoritarian. They were very demanding. My way or the highway. They brook no, you don't talk back, you don't say this, you don't, no. And that was a big criticism back then. And making comparisons between how conductors conducted and conducted rehearsals then. If they didn't like you, you're out. You can't talk back. But now it's obviously a much different era. And also in that era, too, there were no women in the orchestras, as we well know. But now that has changed somewhat. So, John, we come back to the rehearsals of my question now. If you're not getting a note, the tempo's off, something's there, will, say a Zubin, I won't even call the name, will a conductor that's rehearsing, will that person call you out and say, John, no, you're not doing it this way. Boom, this is what I want. Because we hear legions of stories about that, where those conductors would literally single musicians out and embarrass them, almost have them in tears. So how is it done now if say, a conductor rehearsing is not hearing something? Do the individual parts get maybe pointed to, or how's that work?
I think that's a good question. I mean, I think from my perspective, you know, I like to think that I put more pressure on myself than any conductor could put on me. So what I like to do is I like to think about, you know, how many ways that I can actually perform a certain piece, if it's a different note length, a different articulation, because, you know, as being said, you know, each conductor has their own style. They want basically to tell the story in their own manner. And so it's very helpful to be able to play, you know, a note with a certain shape and be able to be flexible in that shape. I think these days most conductors are very polite when they actually are trying to make corrections. You know, of course you get rare exception, but, you know, they are generally very polite and they will ask you very politely to change. And I think we in the orchestra, try to anticipate where we think, this is going. I know in the string section, I've heard many times about the concertmaster, whomever's in the front, saying, well, would you like this kind of bowing? Would you like this kind of approach? And in the brass section, it's the same, where we ask, well, would you like this length of staccato or that length of staccato? So we basically really try and work with the conductor, and we rely pretty heavily on our principal players to basically interpret for the conductor the story that the conductor is trying to tell. And so generally that's a very collegial approach to how we handle problems within the orchestra. And I think that is a bit different than
quite a bit different than boom, you do it this way or you're out.
Yeah, a little bit different, yeah.
It'd have to be changing time. Lenny Borston's with me from the LA Phil. Bing Wong is with me from the LA Phil. John Lofton is with me. Let's take a quick minute. Bring some of the music up. Share it. Share the wealth. Don't be selfish. Let's listen to it. You know what we're listening to here. Here we go. If you can't figure that one out by now, what do you need me for? God. Elvira, where are you now that we need you? We're on the air as I'm talking now, but it's just like we're sitting around the parlor. So I'm just letting the listening audience know where we're going with this. I wrote a book, Lenny, you know about that. I brought it down. I donated it to the LA Phil, Beethoven and Me, and it's called A Beginner's Guide to Classical Music. A little commercial, if I may. Indulge me for a second. What I'm going to do is today and tomorrow on Amazon, we're doing a free reading of my book, Beethoven and Me. Doesn't cost you anything. I mean, what can you say? I mean, I'm making you, to borrow a phrase, an offer you can't refuse. So it's a free reading, Beethoven and Me, A Beginner's Guide to Classical Music on Amazon, Amazon.com. We're also, Lenny, you want to mention again that we have a gift for you. Good for 2 tickets to I got to hold this out, the eyes, to a chamber music organ, Green Umbrella, our Baroque concert. But I got to say something about the Baroque. He used to hate the Baroque stuff. Vivaldi, Telemann, get out of here, Scarlatti. It has grown on me. It's grown on me. I mean, over the years, I can't get enough Baroque now. I mean, God, I don't know how that happened. Opera, I'm still not quite there yet. But the Baroque, I'm beginning to love now. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Why don't we take a call or two? We got someone that's been on the line for 1,000,000 years. Pedro Baez from Sun City. Go right ahead, Pedro. Vino, you got him?
Thank you very much, Earl, and congratulations on your new daughter-in-law. Nothing but the best of...
No, thank you. We had fun the other night at the wedding.
Life through your son and your new daughter-in-law. One of the things we have to say about classical music, and a lot of people that are into other forms of music don't know this, but many of those people that they're listening to were trained on classical music. As a matter of fact, the now deceased piano player of the Funk Brothers was brought up on Romanoff, not Gershwin, but Romanoff. And it's interesting that the reason that a lot of musicians are trained on classical music is because classical music gives them an opportunity to learn the various difficulties of going and intersecting the music from various forms. And one thing is that once you have mastered classical music, you can then go into the other genres without any difficulty. It's not that hard. So the thing is, classical music is very important. And we have to remember that. And with that, I'll let you go because I'm sure there are other people who've been waiting to get on for a long time. So
well, and thanks, thanks, Pedro.
Happy New Year to everyone. And this is a beautiful show. Great show.
It works both ways. And it is true. And I have a section in one of my books, too, talking about the cross-pollination. A lot of the giants in jazz, I mean, Miles, Coltrane, Ellington, I mean, we know about Duke. They grew up with classical music. And they listened to it, and they played it, and they borrowed many of the things, learned from that, too, because it's foundational. The musical genre is foundational. But it works the other way. We also know Gershwin, Rachmaninoff, Copland. We know that they listened to jazz, and they incorporated that. Shostakovich did 2 jazz suites. I mean, so, it's a big tent. It fertilizes and cross-pollinates each one. Oscar from Windsor Hills. Oscar, welcome to the Hutchinson Report. Classical music, your thoughts?
Hey, Earl, how you doing?
Very good.
This is great. This is a great show, man.
Thank you.
I enjoyed classical music, especially with Beethoven. I grew up playing violin and orchestra and what have you as a kid. I wanted to ask a question you kind of got into. I wanted to ask the musicians, besides I wanted to see what the day was like for them, besides the rehearsals. When do they go home and practice? Is that part of their work hours, or is that just their own time?
Their work hours.
Get an idea.
Good question. Do you go home and John? Are you still blowing away on the bass trombone? Bing, are you working out with the bow at home?
Absolutely. The rehearsal is just a part of our day, and for example, I think there's a few levels of prep that we do. Like, for example, just your actual basic technique. You have to keep all of that in top form. It's almost like being an athlete, although I don't look like an athlete. On the trombone I am. But so you keep all those technical issues happening, but then you also have to anticipate what's coming up in the schedule. So, for example, if there's a piece coming up, you need to prepare for it. Sometimes it requires a specific technique that you need to dust off a little bit. And so you basically try to look ahead a little bit, but you also really have to maintain a certain facility on your instrument so that you can basically perform.
We definitely do that. We don't show up to rehearsals cold because that's like sight reading. We prepare ahead, sometimes weeks ahead, depending on the repertoire that's being programmed, because we do have a lot of new music. We have a lot of world premieres. We also have music like Wagner coming up next week.
Bing, hold that thought 1 second. Don't lose your train of thought. You took something right out of my head. I was going to end, because I know it's coming up within another week or so, with Zubin Mehta again, Gata Damarung. We have that on the playlist. So, Ricky, you have the Wagner there. We're going to close out with that, but go right ahead, Bing.
So we prepare weeks ahead, and during and after rehearsals, you brush off what needs to be polished and cleaned up and fine-tuned. So really, the week is not over until the last concert. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you're already head deep into preparing for the following weeks.
Well, and I would expect that, too. A good teacher doesn't just stop teaching, working, preparing lesson plans, beating the kids out when the bell rings. They take it home, and they're working all the time. The great musicians are going to do that, because it's your life. It's not just a job, it's your life. That's the way I know that you see that. You wouldn't have been around this long if that wasn't the case, and rose to the level that you have in the LA Phil, which now, Lenny, if I'm not mistaken, is rated now in the top 5 orchestras in the country. You always think of Chicago, Philly, of course, New York, but now the LA Phil, you're closing the ground.
I don't know that I wouldn't know that we pay attention as much anymore, just because we think we have risen so gracefully and broadly into the world of classical music and being at the height of what an orchestra can do. I think we're a model for what orchestras wish they were a part of and could feel. It's the spirit. Look at the spirit and the non-tension from a family that starts with 105 musicians and another huge group of staff and board and audience. We are a very big family that is quite a loving family, if we look at it, with whatever disagreements there may be. It's quite a big and wonderful family that we all feel a part of, and that's what I think one of the things that we quite love about the Philharmonic.
We got about a minute and a half left, so I want to kind of compress this. So, John, very quickly, in this short period of time, give me your best soundbite on this one. Going forward, not going backward at the present, what are you looking for John Lofton with the LA Phil in your musical career?
I'm looking to play music at the highest level, embrace the challenges that come before me, and try and contribute to an organization that I really and truly believe in.
Bing?
I'm still always trying to become a better musician. Yes.
Okay. And Lenny, we just got about 15, 20 seconds left.
Looking forward to the Philharmonic and the orchestra and the association ever being more woven into the fabric of Los Angeles.
She knows radio. Did you hear that? I gave her cue, and there you go. Oh, they love you for that. My kind of radio person. Vino, thank you. Ricky, you got that Ghana, you got Wagner. You got Wagner queued up. Bring him up there. You know, that Rhine stuff, you know, there you go. Well, you know what they say, doom and gloom Wagner. You know? But not really. I love the guy. Lenny Borston, thank you.
Thank you, Earl.
Bing Wong,
Yes.
thank you. John Lofton, Superstar John, thank you. Gracing the cover of the LA Phil. And Leroy, our crack videographer and live stream guy, and Oliver, Instagram. Vino, thank you, and Ricky for making it happen. We'll go out with Wagner. Gada Damarone. You've been listening to the Hutchinson Report. See you next week. Okay. By the way, we're still going. We're still live. We haven't stopped yet. You can take the headphones off. So, Lenny, John, any final thoughts? Anything? Talk to our audience. Anything? Throw in. Anything that we didn't get to that you want to say about the LA Phil, about your careers, where we're going in the future? Did we cover everything? I'm leaving you speechless. Say something.
I do think, we didn't talk about our resident fellows program. And so that's a program that we're doing. It's basically it's a diversity program, and the purpose of it is to populate our industry with people who are traditionally underrepresented in our industry. African Americans, Latino, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, people who are traditionally not a part of what we experience as we go to the concert hall. And so we're working with our management and also with other organizations like Sphinx in Detroit and New World in Miami to basically become a conduit for many of these people, give them opportunities. And we've actually had some pretty good success. We've gotten 2 people into 2 different orchestras, one in St. Louis and one in Seattle. And so that's something that I think, it would be great to get as much, of that out into the world as we can.
John, wait. What was it called again? We had crossover with the backs.
Oh, the name of the program is called Resident Fellows.
Resident Fellows. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Aren't you working with Dickerson and the Inner City Youth Orchestra?
Well, Dickerson and LA Chamber Orchestra with USC has its own fellows program.
Oh.
And so, what's interesting about this initiative across the country is that the Philharmonic can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck can't do it alone. Cincinnati is also working on a program, can't do it alone. Detroit, Sphinx, we're all looking at this in a holistic way and as a pathway for really providing opportunity to this time really solve for diversity and inclusion in orchestras. I think also programs like YOLA and the Elsa STEM-inspired programs across the country, that's a small percentage of the students coming up through it, will not only be on our stages in time, but will be working. My job, the thing that I loved most about one of our YOLA students who then was ushering at the Hollywood Bowl and is at LOXA, at LA County High School for the Arts now, more in photography than playing double bass. But she's looked at me and said, I want your job. And I go, you don't know what my job is, but in my head. And I go, I love that she wants my job. That's I think that's, and it's our job at the Philharmonic to help create the pathways again. So that is something that she can aspire to, if we want to call it an aspiration, and not being on the stage, but being behind the stage and supporting the work. Yeah. I'm very excited that our graduates from YOLA are coming up into our world, and they'll be more and more present in our field.
Bing, I haven't forgotten that question to you. You span 1, 2, 3, 4 conductors with the LA Phil.
Yes.
Can just summary any from Dudamel back to Esapeka, and I'm just wondering any differences that you've seen in terms of how they conduct the orchestra. Differences or similarities?
I think they're very different. They're very different. They are both, of course, top conductors, really the top in their field. And we're so fortunate to have had them as music directors. But I think Zubin, and they are all about 20 years apart, I think, in age. So Zubin, the senior, elegant Viennese, I think, yes, master. Esa-Pekka really, I think, gave us the tools and the training that we gain to be champion of modern music. The fact that he's both a conductor and a composer, so he's, you know, his razor sharp and way of conducting and technique that really has been so helpful in bring this orchestra to that pristine level. And Gustavo being the charismatic South American, yes, yeah, with the wild hair
Right.
and the stardom, right?
The
yes.
hair is not so wild in it. You know,
Anymore. Yes, a lot of gray in it, right? Yes. But he really, I think he has attracted so much attention, you know, for us. You know, that's great for the orchestra.
I have a final question. Something I've always been curious about as a layperson looking.
Yes.
John and Bing, you've got a conductor who's conducting whatever the piece is, doesn't make any difference. I don't always see, and I'm trying to compute this too, how do you look at the conductor and look at the music? Do you have double vision? I mean, with your eyes, are you actually looking at the conductor the whole time? But you're looking at the music too.
Yeah.
You have 5 eyes.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
You have to constantly have this vision on the conductor as well, even though you're not really staring or looking up directly at them. But you have to constantly be aware of the conductor. So yes, you have to have many senses going at the same time.
Because it looks like, you're looking at the music, the notes, and I'm just wondering what the conductor's doing up there. And we know that they have orchestras, without a conductor. But John, you're way up there.
It's true. You do have to have that kind of sense of, okay, I can see the music, and I generally position my stand so I can look at both at the same time. I can see over the stand to see the conductor, but I can also check out where the music is. And I also think there's a third sense too, which is your hearing. I mean, you have to be aware of what's going on in a different section so you can play together with them. So, for example, I play a lot with the basses. So where they are, if they're playing a certain length, okay, I have to be aware of that. And I think that's the beauty of being a musician, is that it's something that you do with a lot of other people. I mean, my wife's she's a psychologist, and it's like herding cats, working with other psychologists. But with musicians, it's just a normal occurrence that you not only are aware of what you're producing, but you have this peripheral expanded experience where you can actually process what's going on across the stage.
Well, Bing and John, don't waste any more time with me. And I'm going to tell you why. I know, I'm looking at the watch. It's now after 10 o'clock. I know you got to go to work today. I know Zubin is going to be on the podium at 2 o'clock today at Disney Hall. Am I correct? I know, Bing, that you're going to, get that workout again, constantly. I mean, God, when I saw the violins last night, God, woo, sweat coming down. You got to work. You actually got to go to work today. John, you got to go to work today. Go to work. All right. I want to thank all of you again for joining us today. And by the way, this is not a one-shot deal. We're going to be doing this again. I'm going to be coming back again with the LA Phil probably in the spring again, and we'll do it again. I know Dudamel close it out with him. We'll come back and we'll do it again. So just, stay loose, stay relaxed, because you're coming back.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
You can close it out.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again for watching the Hutchinson Report Facebook live stream. Classical music today. You know the drill by now. We post it on my Facebook page. And in addition to that, if you belong to a group, if you belong to anything else, put it up there. Let other people share the wealth. Don't be selfish now. Don't be stingy. Spread it around. Let people know. Comment, your observations, criticisms. Don't criticize me. Criticize Leroy. I don't want any criticism. Don't criticize Lenny. Anybody but not me. John, Ben, criticize them. I'm beyond criticism. The Donald Trump of
There you go. There you go. There
no
you
criticism.
go.
My
No
way or the
criticism.
highway.
All right.
Vino, thank you.
Till next time.
Be sure and post it.